My head felt like it was about to split open, my nostrils filled with the sick sweet smell of antiseptic and blood. I remember the out-of-control semi, the blinding headlights, and the deafening crunch as my beat-up sedan was crushed into a metal pancake. I should have been dead, but when I forced my eyes open, I wasn't staring at the sterile white ceiling of a hospital. I was looking at the six-figure Swarovski crystal chandelier in a master bedroom I shared with Catherine Vance. It was a sight I knew all too well. The light was cold, just like the eyes of the woman standing over me. Catherine Vance, my wife. She wore a tailored silk robe, her long hair falling loosely over her shoulders. Her features were as flawless as a sculpture, but her eyes held nothing but disgust. "Sign it, Jake." Her voice was as frigid as her expression. A document, held between two fingers, fluttered down onto the coffee table in front of me. Divorce papers. My mind roared to life, countless broken memories snapping together into a single, horrifying picture. 3 years ago, this same night, this same mansion, these same papers. I remembered getting on my knees like a dog, clinging to her leg, begging her not to leave me, pleading for one more chance. And for what? She'd had her bodyguards toss me out of the house like a piece of trash. From that day on, my life became a joke. As the Vance family's live-in son-in-law, I was the biggest laughingstock in Northgate's high society. I fought desperately to prove myself, but every time, her so-called best friend, Leo Fisher, sabotaged me from the shadows, ensuring I failed spectacularly. Catherine's contempt for me grew, and her family ground me into the dirt. Even the only family I had left, my father, was ridiculed back home because of my pathetic reputation. He died of a broken heart. In the end, I was delivering for DoorDash in a rust bucket, killed in a staged accident. It was only in my last moments, hearing it from some drunk thug, that I learned the truth. Leo had paid for the hit. And it all started tonight. I was back at the most humiliating, most critical moment of my life. Catherine's brow furrowed as I sat there, motionless. She must have thought I was about to throw another pathetic tantrum. The impatience in her eyes was practically overflowing. "Don't waste my time, Jake. You can have the house, the car. I'll even give you $5 million. Just sign the papers, and we owe each other nothing." The offer was identical to the last time. In my past life, I'd cried that I didn't want the money. I just wanted her. How pathetic that seemed now. I slowly lifted my head, my gaze traveling past the papers to lock directly onto hers. She looked away, a flicker of discomfort in her eyes. She'd never seen me look at her like this. It was a calm, deep stare, like a forgotten well, completely devoid of the fawning, desperate look I used to have. She had no idea that the man sitting before her was no longer the Jake who had loved her to the point of self-destruction. He was a ghost, clawed back from hell, carrying the weight of all that bitterness and rage. I pushed myself up from the couch, my body trembling slightly from the phantom weakness of my rebirth. I didn't even glance at the agreement. I just looked at her and asked, my voice steady, "If I sign this, I'm free?" Catherine froze. She must have had 1,000 cutting remarks prepared for my inevitable begging, but she never expected a question like that. "Of course," she replied, a hint of surprise in her tone she couldn't quite hide. "Good." I leaned over and picked up the Mont Blanc pen from the coffee table. The cool touch of the metal was a grounding sensation. In my last life, this marriage was my entire world. In this life, it was the first shackle I had to break. Without a moment's hesitation, I scrawled Jacob Miller on the signature line, the force of the pen nearly tearing through the paper. When I finished, I tossed the pen aside. The living room was terrifyingly silent, the only sound the ticking of the grandfather clock against the wall. Catherine was completely stunned. Her hand, clutching the sash of her robe, was white at the knuckles. She stared at my signature as if it were written in a foreign language. She couldn't understand it. How could the man who had followed her around like a puppy, the man who had made her his entire universe, walk away so cleanly? Of course, she couldn't understand. She didn't know the despair I had just endured. She didn't know what I'd given up to come back to this moment. And she certainly didn't know that from the second I signed my name, the Jake she knew was dead. "As you wish," I said, pushing the agreement toward her. My voice was flat, without a ripple of emotion. Then, I turned and walked toward the foyer. "Where are you going?" Her voice came from behind me, laced with a panic she didn't seem to recognize herself. I didn't look back. Starting today, we have nothing to do with each other. I opened the front door. The cold night air rushed in, making me feel sharp and awake. Behind me, I heard her frantic shout, "Jake, stop right there." I smiled. "Catherine, the game is just beginning." I didn't stop. I walked straight out of the gilded cage that had imprisoned me for 3 years. I heard the rapid patter of footsteps behind me. Catherine had run out after me, the hem of her silk robe whipping in the night wind. "Are you insane?" she demanded, grabbing my wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. "You just going to leave with nothing?" Her hand was cold, just like her. I gently pulled my arm free and looked at her. In the moonlight, her perfect face was a mask of shock and confusion. It was a much more interesting expression than her usual Ice Queen facade. "What's the alternative?" I shot back. "Stick around to keep getting your dirty looks? To let your family treat me like the hired help?" My words silenced her. Her lips parted, but she couldn't form a reply, because I was telling the truth. "The $5 million. I don't need your charity." I cut her off. I pulled my wallet from my pocket, took out every credit and debit card, and grabbed the keys to the mansion from the hook by the door. I shoved them all into her hand. "Take it all back. I, Jacob Miller, am walking away with nothing." Catherine stared at the bundle of plastic and metal in her hand, as if it were a hot coal. Her mind was reeling. This wasn't how the script was supposed to go. She had expected me to break down in tears, to scream and shout, and to finally take her money and disappear. She had not expected this man, standing tall with a spine of steel, leaving with more finality than she could have ever imagined. This loss of control made her deeply uncomfortable. Just then, her phone rang, the sharp ringtone cutting through the night. She glanced at the caller ID, her frown deepening. It was her assistant. "Yes," she answered, her voice reverting to its usual icy efficiency. "What is it?" Whatever was said on the other end made her expression turn grave. "I understand. I'm on my way to the office now." After hanging up, she looked at me, her eyes a storm of conflicting emotions. There was an emergency at the company. She had to leave immediately. She probably expected me to do what I always did, sidle up and ask what was wrong, only to be shot down with a condescending, "What would you know about it?" But I just watched her quietly, as if she were a stranger. "Where will you go?" she finally asked, a note of concession in her voice she probably didn't even notice. "Don't trouble yourself, Ms. Vance." I threw the words over my shoulder and walked away, not looking back. Behind me, Catherine stood frozen, phone in hand, watching my back disappear into the darkness. She stood there for a long time, feeling something she had never felt before slipping rapidly through her fingers. I walked down the winding hill for a long time. This neighborhood, the Heights, was a paradise for the rich, but for someone who had just walked away with nothing, even catching an Uber was a challenge. The wind was cold, but I didn't feel it. All I felt was an unprecedented sense of release. I searched all my pockets and finally found 2 crumpled $100 bills and a few coins in the corner of my jeans. It was the last of the cash I'd had in my past life. I laughed at the irony. The kept husband of the Vance family, with a little over $200 to his name. Who would believe it? But it didn't matter. I pulled out an old-school Nokia burner phone, something I kept hidden so Catherine couldn't track me. I dialed a number I knew by heart. The phone rang for a long time before someone picked up. "Yeah? Who's this?" "It's the middle of the night." A sleepy male voice mumbled. "Stax, it's me. Jake." The breathing on the other end stopped. I heard rustling. "Jake? You got out." "Stax, my best friend from college. He was a tech genius, a hacker who got a 3-year sentence for a cyber attack that went sideways. If I remembered the timeline correctly, I died shortly after he was released in my last life. I was never in," I said succinctly. "I need a place to crash. And a computer with an internet connection. You and the Ice Queen. You split." Stax's voice was suddenly wide awake. "Yeah, hell yeah. It's about time. I never liked her anyway. Hold on, I'll text you the address. I'm staying in my cousin's crappy old place in the annex. Got a spare room." After hanging up, I flagged down a passing taxi and headed straight for the address Stax gave me. It was a typical rundown urban neighborhood, the narrow alleys a mix of sour garbage and damp mildew. It was a world away from the mansion in the Heights. But to me, it smelled like freedom. Stacks was waiting for me at the mouth of the alley in boxers and a tank top, his hair a bird's nest. When he saw me, he pulled me into a bear hug. Damn, man, you finally came to your senses. He punched me on the shoulder. Come on, let's go inside. His place was barely 300 square feet and looked like a tornado had hit it. But he had managed to clear out a small, clean room for me. It's rough, but I'll clean it up more tomorrow, he said, handing me a can of beer. I didn't take it. I just looked at him. Stacks, you want to make some real money? He blinked, and then his eyes lit up. How real? I held up one finger. $1 million. I shook my head. $10 million. I smiled. $100 million. In 1 month. The beer can slip from Stacks's hand and clattered to the floor. He stared at me like I was a lunatic. Jake, are you running a fever? I didn't explain. I just took his laptop and opened a heavily encrypted overseas crypto exchange. At this exact moment, Bitcoin had just taken a nosedive. Countless people were wiped out, and the market was in a state of panic. Everyone thought it was finished. But I knew that in 3 days, a small Nordic country would announce its decision to add Bitcoin to its national strategic reserves. Once that news broke, the price would skyrocket 100-fold within 24 hours. In my past life, I'd overheard Leo Fisher bragging about this to someone. Unfortunately, back then, I could barely afford to eat. I had to watch this life-changing opportunity pass me by. This time, I wouldn't miss it. I took the $200 from my pocket, along with $3,000 I borrowed from Stacks, and put it all in. Stacks's eyes nearly popped out of his head as he watched me go all in. Bro, are you serious? Dead serious, I said, closing the laptop. I looked out the window at the pitch-black sky. Catherine, Leo, and everyone who ever looked down on me. Just you wait. Soon enough, you're all going to understand what a colossal mistake you made. The next 3 days were strangely calm. Stacks and I were crammed into his tiny apartment. We spent our days coding and our nights eating ramen cups. He thought the divorce had pushed me over the edge, so he didn't ask too many questions. He just quietly kept me company. He didn't know I was waiting for the financial thunderclap that would change everything. In those 3 days, Catherine didn't call or text me once. It was as if I had completely vanished from her world. I knew her pride would never let her reach out first. She was probably waiting for me to come crawling back, tail between my legs, begging for her forgiveness. Too bad for her. She would be waiting forever. On the morning of the 4th day, I was jolted awake by Stacks's frantic screaming. Holy crap! Holy crap! Jake, you gotta see this. I shot out of bed and ran to the computer. On the screen, the candlestick chart for Bitcoin looked like a rocket taking off, soaring straight up at an impossible angle. Red, blinding red. The long string of zeros after the price was enough to make you dizzy. News alerts were popping up like crazy, each headline more sensational than the last. Shocker. Nordic nation declares Bitcoin legal tender. Market frenzy. Bitcoin soars 120x overnight. Investors who sold yesterday, seen lining up on rooftops. Stacks was hugging the laptop, dancing around like a madman. We're rich. We're rich. Jake, are you some kind of god? I stared at the balance in our account. $386,250. Our initial investment of $3,200 had multiplied by 120 times. Overnight, I took a deep breath, forcing down the surge of excitement. I knew this was just the beginning. My seed money was secured. Don't get too excited yet, I said, clapping Stacks on the shoulder and forcing myself to calm down. Sell it all. Right now. Don't leave a single cent in. What? But it's still climbing. Stacks protested. Trust me. Do it now. My tone left no room for argument. I remembered clearly from my past life. Leo had mentioned that right after this spike, a massive wave of regulations and market manipulation would hit. Countless people who jumped in late would be financially buried. Though confused, Stacks trusted me. He gritted his teeth and executed the sale. The moment the funds hit our bank account, we looked at each other, both of us in a dreamlike daze. Jake, we have $386,000. Yep. What do we do now? Buy a house? A car? Stacks was already fantasizing. No. I shook my head, a sharp glint in my eye. We're starting a company. I wasn't going to be some flash-in-the-pan gambler. I was going to build my own business empire. And I already had the perfect entry point. An algorithm that would completely revolutionize the short-form video industry within the next 2 years. In my past life, I had anonymously posted the core concept for this model on a small tech forum. Leo Fisher stole it and used it as his stepping stone to success. This time I was taking it back. Just as I was about to lay out my business plan for Stacks, my old burner phone rang. It was an unknown number. I frowned and answered it. Hello, am I speaking with Mr. Jacob Miller? A respectful but anxious male voice asked. This is he. Who's calling? Mr. Miller, hello. This is Mr. Vance's driver. My name is Roberts. Mr. Vance? Catherine's father, Harrison Vance? My stomach dropped. In my past life, Harrison had always been decent to me, the only person in the Vance family who showed me any kindness. But his health was poor. Not long after I was thrown out, he had a sudden heart attack. The delayed response time left him with severe complications, and he passed away soon after. Wait a second. It suddenly hit me. The timing. It was today. In my past life, it was this afternoon, during a board meeting at Vance Corporation, that Harrison Vance had a massive heart attack. A misdiagnosis at the scene wasted the most critical window for treatment. Mr. Roberts, why are you calling me? I asked, my voice low as I tried to suppress my shock. Well, Mr. Miller, Mr. Vance has a very important board meeting this afternoon, but he was complaining of chest tightness this morning. We wanted to call the family doctor, but he insisted he was fine. I remember you mentioning once that you had some family background in emergency first aid. I was hoping you might be able to come take a look at him. I have a bad feeling about this. Roberts' voice was pleading. I understood. This phone call never happened in my last life. I was probably too busy fighting with Catherine over the divorce, and Roberts never had the chance to contact me. But this time, because I had left so decisively, a new variable had been introduced. This was my chance. A chance to repay Harrison for his kindness in my past life. Mr. Roberts, listen to me very carefully. My voice became deadly serious. Forget everything else. Go to a pharmacy right now and buy a small bottle of nitroglycerin pills. Also, find a pin, the thinnest one you can get. Then go straight to the office and stay by Mr. Vance's side. Do not leave him. Tell him he has to let you sit in on the board meeting. What? Mr. Miller, I don't understand. Roberts was completely bewildered. Don't ask questions. This is life or death. If you trust me, do exactly as I say. I'm on my way there right now. I hung up, grabbed my jacket, and bolted for the door. Jake, what's wrong? Stacks was startled by my reaction. Saving a life. I threw the words behind me and ran down the stairs as if my life depended on it. I had to get to Vance Tower before that board meeting started. I wasn't just going to save Harrison Vance's life. I was going to make Catherine and the entire Vance family see exactly who and what they had thrown away. Vance Tower was one of Northgate's most iconic skyscrapers. When I sprinted, breathless, to the main entrance, 2 security guards blocked my path. Sir, do you have an appointment? I'm here to see Chairman Harrison Vance. It's an emergency. The guards looked me up and down. I was still wearing a cheap, off-the-rack suit that was completely out of place in the opulent lobby. A flicker of disdain crossed their faces. No appointment, no entry. This is a matter of life and death. I said, my voice rising with urgency. We get that all the time from people trying to sneak in to see the chairman, one of them said with a sneer. Just then, a black Bentley glided silently to the curb. The doors opened, and Catherine and Leo Fisher stepped out. Catherine was in a sleek, custom-tailored power suit, her expression as cold as ever. Leo, beside her, was dressed in a flashy white blazer, his hair slicked back with too much gel. He was fawning over Catherine, whispering something in her ear. Catherine, don't you worry. I'll make sure I lock down this partnership with Starforge Tech for you. They both saw me at the same time, and their reactions were starkly different. Leo's face lit up with undisguised glee. He swaggered over, looking down at me as if I were an insect. Well, if it isn't the great Jacob Miller. What's the matter? Run out of places to go after the divorce. So you came here to beg? Catherine's expression was far more complex. She saw my sweat-drenched, frantic state, and her brow tightened. She probably thought I'd had a change of heart and had come back to harass her. Get rid of him, she said coldly to the guards. You hear that? Ms. Vance wants you to scram. Leo's grin widened. I ignored him completely, my eyes fixed on Catherine. Where's Harrison? How is the chairman? The word dad that I almost let slip made Catherine flinch. Leo, however, acted as if he'd just heard the funniest joke in the world. You still have the nerve to call him that? You're a worthless leech who got kicked to the curb. You have no right. Catherine, I said, still looking only at her. Trust me, let me go up there, where you will regret it for the rest of your life. My gaze was more serious than she had ever seen it. She was visibly shaken. She had never seen this side of me. It wasn't pleading or fawning. It was a commanding presence, laced with a warning that was impossible to ignore. In the moment she hesitated, a commotion erupted from inside the tower. Mr. Roberts came stumbling out of the elevator, his face pale as a ghost. It's bad, Ms. Vance. The chairman collapsed in the boardroom. The color drained from Catherine's face. She forgot all about me, hiking up her skirt and sprinting inside. Leo followed, feigning concern and yelling, Mr. Vance. My heart sank. I was too late. I shoved past the stunned security guards and tore after them. The top-floor boardroom was in chaos. Harrison Vance was slumped in the chairman's seat, his face a ghastly shade of blue, completely unconscious. A crowd of executives in expensive suits surrounded him, fumbling uselessly. One was trying to force his jaw open. Another was clumsily pounding on his chest. They were all doing more harm than good. Get out of the way. Catherine shrieked, rushing to her father's side. Dad, what's wrong? Someone call 911. Call 911. Leo yelled, trying to take charge of the situation. I pushed through the crowd. Seeing Harrison's clenched fists and purple lips, I knew instantly it was a major heart attack. At a time like this, any wrong move could be fatal. Don't touch him, I roared. Every head in the room snapped toward me. Jake, Catherine's brother, Theo, stared at me in disbelief. How did you get up here, you loser? Get out. If you don't want him to die, then shut your mouths. I shoved Theo aside, sending him stumbling into the conference table, and rushed to Harrison's side. Jake, what do you think you're doing? Catherine yelled, trying to block me. You have no right to touch my father. I have no right. My eyes were bloodshot as I glared at her. Then they do. They're killing him. I gestured wildly at the clueless board members. By the time the ambulance gets here, it'll be too late. I ignored her, ripping open Harrison's collar to clear his airway. Then I turned to Roberts, who was standing by, pale and shaking. Mr. Roberts, the things I told you to get. Here. Right here, he stammered, pulling the bottle of pills and a small packet containing a pin from his pocket. I shook out 2 nitroglycerin pills, pried Harrison's mouth open, and placed them under his tongue. Then I took the pin and, without hesitating, pricked the tip of his left pinky finger. You're insane. You're trying to kill him. Theo shouted, lunging at me. Get off me. I threw an elbow back, catching him in the chest with enough force to send him staggering away. Everyone in the room was in shock. They had never seen the meek, pathetic Jacob Miller act with such ferocity. Ignoring their stares, I quickly pricked the tips of all 10 of his fingers, squeezing out drops of dark, purplish blood that stained the expensive carpet. Catherine stood frozen, watching me. She saw my calm, focused movements, saw me shove her brother aside, saw the absolute command in my actions. She was completely bewildered. Was this really the same Jake who could barely speak a coherent sentence in her presence? The man whose only skills were cooking and cleaning? Just then, Harrison, who had been completely unresponsive, let out a low groan, followed by a series of deep, racking coughs. The ghastly blue color of his face began to recede, replaced by a healthier, reddish hue. He was responding. A collective gasp went through the room. I let out a long breath, feeling the cold sweat drenching my back. It worked. I had pulled him back from the brink of death. At that exact moment, the boardroom doors flew open, and a team of paramedics rushed in. What's the situation? I stood up, wiping the blood from my hands, and looked at the lead paramedic. My voice was steady. Patient suffered an acute myocardial infarction. I administered sublingual nitroglycerin and performed a simple bloodletting technique to buy him at least 10 minutes of critical time. My voice wasn't loud, but it hit everyone in the room like a thunderclap. Catherine stared at me, her eyes wide with utter disbelief. She had no idea that in my past life, consumed by guilt after her father's death, I had obsessively studied every piece of emergency medical information I could find, especially traditional and obscure techniques. I couldn't save him in the last life, but in this one I had. The hospital corridor was thick with a tense, suffocating silence. Catherine, her brother Theo, and a few other core members of the Vance family were waiting outside the emergency room, their faces etched with anxiety. Only I sat calmly on a bench at the far end of the hall, an outsider looking in. Leo Fisher paced back and forth near me, occasionally shooting me a venomous glare. He couldn't figure out how a loser like me suddenly knew first aid. He was even more furious that I had stolen the spotlight on a day when he was supposed to be the hero. "Don't get cocky, Jake," he hissed, leaning in close. "So you got lucky and save him this one time. What does it matter? In Catherine's eyes, you'll always be a piece of trash who doesn't belong." I didn't even bother to look up. Why waste words on a dead man? For what you did to me in our last life, I'll be collecting piece by piece with interest. The light above the ER door went out. The doors opened, and an older doctor with gold-rimmed glasses walked out. "Doctor, how's my father?" Catherine was the first to rush forward. "He's stabilized and out of immediate danger," the doctor said, removing his mask. His face showed a measure of relief. It was a close call. He was brought in just in time, and more importantly, someone performed an incredibly professional and correct pre-hospital emergency procedure. It bought us the most valuable window of time. I think it's safe to say that person saved the patient's life. The doctor paused, his eyes scanning the group. "May I ask who administered the first aid?" Every single person in the hallway turned to look at me. Catherine swayed on her feet, her face pale. Theo looked like he'd swallowed a bug. Leo's face turned the color of charcoal. "Mister." Roberts quickly stepped forward and pointed at me. "Doctor, it was this man, Mr. Miller." The doctor walked over, looking me up and down with open admiration. "Young man, that was quite impressive. Using pinpricks on the fingertips to relieve pressure. That's an old field medicine technique. Not many people know it these days. Which medical school did you attend?" "I didn't go to medical school. I'm self-taught," I replied calmly, standing up. "Self-taught." The doctor was even more surprised. "Remarkable. Truly remarkable. It's so rare to see young people studying these classic techniques. Son, have you ever considered a career in medicine? I'd be willing to mentor you myself." The doctor's words were like a series of loud, stinging slaps across the faces of the Vance family. The man they considered a worthless parasite was now being praised and courted by a respected medical expert. The stark contrast made their expressions a sight to behold. "Thank you for the offer, sir, but my interests lie elsewhere," I said, declining politely. My battlefield was in the boardroom, not the operating room. Harrison Vance was moved to a private VIP suite. The first thing he did when he woke up was ask to see me. When I entered the room, Catherine and Theo were both there. Theo glared at me as if he wanted to set me on fire. Catherine kept her head down, her expression hidden. "Jake, come here." Harrison's voice was weak, but his eyes were filled with warmth and gratitude. I walked to his bedside. "Thank you for this," he said, taking my hand and patting it firmly. "Roberts told me everything. If it wasn't for you, I would have been a goner today." "You're exaggerating, sir. You were always kind to me." "It was the least I could do," I said calmly. Harrison sighed, his gaze shifting to his son and daughter. His expression grew complicated. "Jake, I heard. You and Catherine. You signed divorce papers." "Yes." "Why?" Harrison looked me straight in the eye. "Did something happen? Were you wronged in some way?" His question made both Catherine and Theo shift uncomfortably. I shook my head. "No one wronged me. I just realized we aren't right for each other. You can't force things. It's better to let her go and to let myself go." "Let me go." Catherine, who had been silent the whole time, suddenly lifted her head and stared at me, her eyes burning. "Jake, what do you mean, let me go?" That phrase had clearly struck a nerve. In her mind, she was the one who had been tolerating me. I was the one holding her back. Since when was it my place to let her go? I met her gaze, my own eyes betraying no emotion. "It means what it sounds like, Ms. Vance. From now on, you have your path, and I have mine. We're even." With that, I gave Harrison a slight bow. "Mr. Vance, please get some rest. I'll be leaving now, I turned and walked out, without an ounce of hesitation. "Jake," Catherine called out from behind me. I didn't stop. Even as I walked out of the hospital room, I could feel her searing gaze burning into my back. After leaving the hospital, I didn't go back to Stax's apartment. I got a room at a hotel instead. I knew Catherine would have people looking into me. That grimy little apartment was no longer secure. I opened my laptop and started drafting my business plan. The algorithm model, market analysis, funding proposals. All the things I had dreamed about in my past life were now flowing from my fingertips, becoming real. Meanwhile, back at Vance Tower, Catherine was listening to her assistant's report in her office, her expression growing darker by the second. "Ms. Vance, according to our investigation, all of Mr. Miller's bank accounts were closed 3 days ago. When he left the residence, he took nothing with him. Where did he go? He went to the apartment of Zach Strong, also known as Stax. He's a college friend who was just released from prison. They're living in a sub-300 square foot apartment in the annex." Catherine's fingernails dug into her palms. Jake would rather go to an ex-convict for help, would rather live in a place like that, than accept her $5 million. The humiliation was a physical blow. Also, the assistant hesitated. "We traced an overseas account opened 3 days ago under Zach Strong's name. It invested $3,200 into the crypto market just as Bitcoin was crashing. The entire position was sold at the peak for a profit of $386,000. Catherine's eyes widened. $3,000. 3 days. $386,000. The timing, the precision of the trade. She was no fool. She knew exactly what that implied. It wasn't luck. It was a godlike level of foresight. She suddenly remembered Jake bursting into the boardroom to save her father, the absolute authority in his voice. She remembered him in hospital, his calm and composure as he turned down the chief of medicine's offer. How could a man who had been a pathetic doormat for 3 years transform so completely the moment he was divorced? How could a simple house husband know so many things that were completely outside her own world of knowledge? Unless he had been hiding it all along. The thought, once it appeared, grew like a thorny vine, wrapping itself around her mind. She suddenly realized that she had never, not once, truly known the man she had been married to. She picked up her phone, found a number she had blocked and unblocked countless times, and for the first time she made the call. It rang for a long time. Just as she was about to hang up, assuming he wouldn't answer, the call connected. "Hello. It's me," Catherine started, her own voice sounding rough to her ears. "Where are you? Is there something you need?" Jake's tone was the kind one uses with a telemarketer. The feeling of being dismissed so easily ignited a flash of anger in her. "Jake, I asked you where you are." "Ms. Vance?" His voice on the other end turned cold. "I believe I made myself clear before. We are divorced. I don't see why I need to report my whereabouts to you." Then he hung up. Listening to the dead air, Catherine stood frozen in her office, unable to process what had just happened. That was the first time Jake had ever hung up on her. Hanging up on Catherine didn't give me a thrill, just a bitter sense of irony. In my past life, I had her number on speed dial, my ringer on 24/7, terrified of missing a single call from her. And she'd answer when she felt like it, and hang up or just send me to voicemail when she didn't. Now, the roles were simply reversed. I poured my energy into preparing for the startup. $386,000 sounded like a lot, but to launch a tech company, it was pocket change. I needed more capital, and I needed a serious backer to lend me legitimacy. I opened an encrypted file on my laptop. Inside was a single name, Marcus Thorne, the wealthiest man in Northgate, a living legend. In my past life, I'd read an obscure interview with him in a financial journal. He mentioned that the most terrifying moment of his life wasn't a hostile takeover, but a high-speed drive on Summit Ridge Road. Someone had tampered with his brakes. He would have gone over the cliff if a young man in a beat-up car hadn't swerved to block him, sacrificing his own vehicle. That young man was me. I had just been thrown out by Catherine and was driving aimlessly in the mountains, completely dejected. When I saw his car lose control, I reacted on pure instinct. Afterward, he tried to thank me, to reward me, but I was so consumed with despair that I refused everything and just disappeared. He never knew who I was, but I knew him. I also knew that the accident had been orchestrated by a business rival. And more importantly, I knew that the anniversary of that day was in 1 week. Every year, on that day, he went to Summit Ridge Road alone to pay his respects. This was my chance. Over the next few days, I used the money I had to officially register a company with Stacks, Singularity Systems. We rented a small office in a remote tech park. On our first day, there were no flowers, no celebrations. Just me and Stacks. We cracked open a couple of beers to mark the occasion. So Jake, just the two of us. What exactly are we doing? Stacks asked, looking around the empty office. We're writing code. I laid out the core architecture of the dynamic persona recommendation algorithm, the one I knew by heart, and gave it to him. Your job is to build the foundational model. Make me a list of whatever hardware you need. Stacks took one look at the papers and froze, as if he'd been struck by lightning. Holy shit, he breathed, his eyes glued to the pages, practically glowing with excitement. Jake, you came up with this? This is a miracle. If we can build this, it will crush every content platform on the market. Then let's get to work, I said, clapping him on the shoulder. We were deep in our work when there was a knock on the door. Stacks and I exchanged a look. Who will be visiting us here? You want to open it? Standing in the doorway, dressed in a flashy white suit and smiling smugly, was Leo Fisher. My eyes narrowed. The guy was like a bad smell you couldn't get rid of. Well, Jacob Miller. I heard you started a company. Just thought I'd stop by to offer my congratulations, Leo said, walking in without an invitation. He glanced around our pathetic little office, the sneer on his face impossible to miss. Singularity Systems? Catchy name. Just the two of you? A failure and an ex-con. What a perfect match. Stacks's face turned red, and he balled his fists, ready to lunge. I held it back. Leo, I said, looking at the man who had me killed in my past life, my voice ice cold. Are you here just to spew garbage? Of course not. Leo pulled up a chair and sat down, throwing a gold-leafed business card on the table. I'm a new VP at Starforge Tech. We're launching a short-form video project, and we need an algorithm team. You two look like you have a lot of free time. Interested in doing some contract work for us? We'll make it worth your while. Starforge Tech, his father's company. In my past life, he used my stolen algorithm to make their video app a massive success, turning it into an industry powerhouse and cementing his position as VP. And now, he was trying to do it again. He wasn't interested in hiring me and Stacks. He must have heard whispers, and he was here to steal my ideas again. He thought I was still the same naive fool who trusted him with everything. Sure, I said with a bright smile. But why should we trust you? Leo clearly didn't expect me to agree so easily. A triumphant glint appeared in his eyes. Because of this, he said, pulling out his phone and showing me a picture. It was Catherine sitting at a dinner table, laughing and talking with a middle-aged man. See this? Catherine is helping us at Starforge secure our next round of funding. She and I, we're on the same team. And you, Jake, you've been left behind. He wanted to use Catherine to get under my skin, to make me lose my cool. He miscalculated badly. I gave the photo a cursory glance. Oh, well, good luck with that. My calm indifference left him speechless. All the insults he had prepared were stuck in his throat. He looked like he'd punched a pillow. Don't play tough, Jake, he said, standing up and straightening his suit. I'll give you 3 days to think about it. When you come to your senses, come find me at Starforge. And remember, I'm the one giving you a chance to not starve to death. He walked out with his nose in the air. Stacks was fuming. Jake, why'd you stop me? I wanted to beat the crap out of that jerk. He's trying to steal your algorithm again. Patience, I said, watching Leo's retreating back, my eyes like chips of ice. The fish has taken the bait. He's not here to partner with us. He's here to test the waters. He wants to walk away with our core algorithm without paying a dime. Stacks stared at me. So what do? We play his game. A cold smirk spread across my face. He wants it. I'll give it to him. But what I'm going to give him is a poison pill. I was going to make him vomit up everything he ever stole from me, tenfold. 3 days later, the Vance Corporation hosted a massive business gala. Nearly every person of importance in Northgate was there. When I showed up at the entrance wearing a suit I'd bought from a discount warehouse, I immediately became the center of attention. Isn't that the Vance's useless son-in-law? What's he doing here? I heard Catherine finally kicked him out with nothing. How does he have a nerve to show his face? Look at what he's wearing. Is that from Walmart? So embarrassing. The whispers and disdainful looks came from every direction, sharp as needles. I didn't care. I'd heard it all before in my past life. Leo had given me the invitation. He pretended it was a kind gesture, a chance for me to network and see how the other half lives. In reality, he just wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone. But I wasn't here for his humiliation. I walked into the ballroom and immediately spotted Catherine. She was wearing a stunning silver off-the-shoulder gown, looking every bit the queen she was, surrounded by a crowd of admirers. She saw me too, and her brow instantly furrowed with annoyance and disgust. Leo buzzed over to her side like a fly, whispering in her ear. I could only imagine the trash he was talking. As expected, Catherine's expression turned even colder. Leo strode toward me triumphantly, with Catherine's brother, Theo, in tow. "Jake, I can't believe you actually came," Theo sneered. "Who let you in?" "Security." "I brought him," Leo said, playing the part of the good guy. "Theo, don't be upset. Jake's just going through a tough time with a divorce. I thought he could use a night out." His voice was dripping with false sympathy, but loud enough for half the room to hear. "A night out? Does he belong here?" Theo scoffed. "A loser with a joke of a company. His shoes are probably dirtying the Van Cess carpet." They performed their double act flawlessly, and the people around them watched with amusement. Catherine stood a short distance away, watching the scene unfold with a cold detachment, doing nothing to stop it. In her eyes, I probably deserved it. "So, Jake, have you thought about my offer?" Leo clapped me on the shoulder, his tone dripping with condescension. "Come work for me, and I guarantee you'll be set for life. It's better than rotting in that dump you call an office, right?" "Your company?" I smiled. "Starforge Tech? I'm not really interested in a company that built itself by stealing other people's ideas." The color drained from Leo's face. "What are you talking about?" he sputtered, a flicker of panic in his eyes. "You know exactly what I'm talking about," I said, looking him straight in the eye. "Leo, don't treat everyone else like an idiot." "You." He was speechless with rage. Just then, a ripple of excitement went through the crowd. The sea of people at the entrance parted, and an old man with a full head of white hair, radiating energy and power, walked in, flanked by a team of bodyguards. Marcus Thorne, the richest man in Northgate. His arrival shifted the entire center of gravity of the room. Everyone, including Catherine's father, Harrison, rushed to greet him. "Mr. Thorne, what an honor to have you here." "Harrison, good to see you're looking better." "That was a close call the other day," Marcus said, exchanging pleasantries but continuously scanning the room as if searching for someone. Leo quickly dragged his own father over, hoping to get a moment of the billionaire's time. But Marcus Thorne merely gave them a passing glance before his eyes moved on. His gaze swept across the room and finally landed on me, the insignificant nobody in the corner. Then, to the absolute shock of everyone present, he started walking directly toward me. His bodyguards formed a perimeter, blocking everyone who tried to approach, including Harrison Vance and the Fishers. The ballroom fell silent. You could have heard a pin drop. Everyone was stunned. They couldn't comprehend why the most powerful man in the city was walking toward the despised, pathetic ex-son-in-law. Catherine was frozen, her hand trembling as she held her champagne flute. Leo and Theo looked like they had seen a ghost. Under the weight of 100 pairs of eyes, Marcus Thorne stopped in front of me, a broad, almost ridiculously enthusiastic smile on his face. "My boy, I finally found you." He grabbed my hand and shook it firmly, as if he was afraid I'd run away. "That day on Summit Ridge Road, if it wasn't for you, I'd be dead. I've been looking all over for you." I smiled back faintly. "It was nothing, Mr. Thorne. Please don't worry about it." That's right. I had gone to the mountain and replayed the events of my past life, saving him again. "Nothing? Nonsense. You saved my life," Marcus said, his voice booming. "I heard you just started your own company, Singularity Systems. As it happens, I have some capital I'm looking to invest in a promising tech venture. Your company I'm in." He held up 5 fingers. $5 million. Leo stammered from the sidelines. Marcus Thorne looked at him as if he were an idiot. $500 million. I'll start with $500 million. If you need more, just ask." The announcement was like a bomb going off in the ballroom. Everyone was losing their minds. $500 million, just like that, invested in a tiny, unknown company run by two people. It was insane. The world had gone mad. Leo's face turned a deep shade of purple. He had just been gloating about securing a few million in funding for Starforge, and now he was being completely overshadowed by a $500 million investment. Theo's jaw was hanging open. And Catherine, she just stared at me, at the man holding hands with the city's most powerful billionaire. Her eyes were a swirling vortex of shock, confusion, and something else she couldn't name. For the first time, she felt that the man she had so casually discarded was not just a man, but the tip of an iceberg, hiding a volcano of unknown depth and power beneath the surface. I met her complicated gaze, raised my glass in a silent toast, and then, under the stunned and envious eyes of everyone in the room, I followed Marcus Thorne up to the private VIP lounge on the second floor. All I left them with was the sight of my back, confident and final. The gala ended on a sour note for most. The news that Jacob Miller, backed by a staggering $500 million investment from Marcus Thorne, was a new power player in town spread like wildfire through Northgate's business community. Everyone who had ever looked down on him was in a state of shock. The Vance family's resident loser had become the city's hottest commodity overnight. In her office, Catherine listened to her assistant's report, silent and still. On her desk lay a new, more detailed file on Jake. It detailed his preternatural prediction of the Bitcoin surge, his miraculous saving of her father's life, and now, his connection to Marcus Thorne. Every event was a mystery. The final page of the report was a copy of Jake's initial draft for the dynamic persona algorithm, which her assistant had bought for a hefty price from a janitor at the tech park who had found it in the trash. When Catherine showed the document to her company's chief technology officer, the notoriously arrogant man studied it for 30 minutes straight. Then he looked at her and said one thing. Ms. Vance, if this concept can be realized, it's worth more than $5 billion. $5 billion. Catherine held the thin stack of papers, and they felt as heavy as lead. She thought back on the 3 years Jake had spent by her side. He had always been so careful, so eager to please, so clumsy. He would be ecstatic for an entire day over a single careless compliment from her, and terrified by one of her impatient glares. He once spent 3 days meticulously preparing a complex stew that was her favorite, only for her to dismiss it with a casual, "I'm not hungry," and dump in the trash. He had waited for her for 3 hours in the pouring rain outside her office, just to give her a ride home, only to watch her leave in a car with Leo Fisher. She had always believed he was a man with nothing to offer, a man whose entire world revolved around her. Now, this report told her she was wrong, spectacularly wrong. Could a man who designed a $5 billion algorithm be a loser? Could a man who earned the respect of Marcus Thorne be a simple house husband? He wasn't useless. He had just been carefully hiding his brilliance, tucking it away behind his love for her. And she had personally taken that love and the incredible man she never bothered to know and thrown it all away. Ms. Vance, her assistant's voice broke her reverie. There's one more thing. Go on. Regarding Starforge Tech's new video app, we found that the core algorithm, their marketing, is more than 90% similar to the concept in Mr. Miller's draft. Catherine's eyes narrowed. Furthermore, VP Leo Fisher has been in frequent contact with one of our former project managers. That project was originally led by Mr. Miller, but it was shut down due to a technology leak. Mr. Miller was disciplined by you for the incident. The assistant trailed off, but the implication was clear. The technology leak all those years ago hadn't been Jake's fault. It was Leo. Leo, the man she had trusted as her closest confidant, had been playing her the entire time. He stole Jake's ideas, framed him for the failure, and then played the part of the supportive friend to her. In an instant, a tidal wave of regret and fury washed over Catherine. She finally understood what Jake had meant at the gala. A company that built itself by stealing other people's ideas. She finally understood just how blind she had been for the past 3 years. She snatched her car keys from the desk and ran out of the office. She had to find Jake. She had to apologize. She had to understand everything. For the first time ever, she drove to the dilapidated tech park where Singularity Systems was located. She found Jake in a ridiculously empty office. He and Stax were gathered around a whiteboard, arguing passionately about some complex diagram. He was wearing a simple white t-shirt, his expression intense, his eyes shining with a light she had never seen before. For a moment, Catherine was mesmerized. So this was the real him. "Jake," she said, her voice hoarse. Jake and Stax both turned. Upon seeing her, Stax immediately became guarded, stepping in front of Jake protectively. Jake's reaction was much more subdued. He glanced at her, then turned back to the whiteboard and continued what he was doing, as if she were a stranger who had wandered into the wrong room. Being so completely ignored was a sharp, physical pain. "Jake, we need to talk," she said, taking a deep breath. "I have nothing to say to you," he replied without turning around. "I know about Leo. I know about everything." Her voice trembled. "I'm sorry. I was wrong about you." At the whiteboard, Jake's hand stopped moving. He slowly turned to face her, his expression unreadable. "And," he asked flatly, "did you come all the way out to this dump just to say you're sorry, Ms. Vance?" If that's all, then I accept your apology. You can go now." His tone was as cold and hard as ice. Catherine's heart sank. She thought that if she just apologized, if she showed her remorse, Jake would do what he always did, forgive her instantly and come back to her. She had forgotten. The man standing in front of her was not that Jake anymore. Just then, the office door opened again. A sharp, professionally dressed woman walked in, carrying 2 takeout containers. "Mr. Miller, I brought the lunch you asked for," the woman said, placing the food on a desk and smiling warmly at Jake. She was Quinn Ellis, the professional manager Marcus Thorne had sent to help Jake. But to Catherine, the scene was a dagger to the heart. She saw the admiration in the woman's eyes when she looked at Jake. She saw that Jake, while not warm, was at least polite and respectful to her. Not like the cold indifference he showed to Catherine. A wave of panic and jealousy, stronger than anything she had ever felt, seized her. Who was she? The words slipped out before she could stop them. Jake frowned, clearly annoyed by her question. "My colleague. Catherine let out a cold laugh. 3 years of possessiveness and control erupting all at once. "Jake, don't forget, we're still." She wanted to say, "We're not officially divorced yet." But the words died on her lips, frozen by the icy look in his eyes. "We're still what?" Jake looked at her, his expression full of mockery. "Ms. Vance, let me be clear. We signed the divorce papers. Legally, after the 30-day cooling-off period, we are done. During this time, I expect you to stay out of my life. My business is none of your concern. My lunch is getting cold. Please see yourself out." It was a dismissal, a blunt, merciless dismissal. The blood drained from Catherine's face. She watched Jake and the woman named Quinn start to eat, talking and laughing softly. She felt like an intruder, a clown. She stumbled out of the office, almost running. Once inside her car, she couldn't hold it in any longer. She slammed her fist against the steering wheel. The horn blared, a mournful cry that mirrored her own silent scream. Catherine's visit was nothing more than a minor interruption. With Marcus Thorne's $500 million, Singularity Systems entered a period of explosive growth. We hired top talent and leased the largest building in the tech park. Stax led the engineering team, working around the clock to perfect the algorithm. I worked with Quinn to strategize the market launch for our upcoming product. Everything was moving according to my plan. Meanwhile, Leo's Starforge Tech loudly announced that their short-form video app, Starlight, was about to launch. At the press conference, a triumphant Leo claimed that Starlight used a revolutionary, intelligent, emotion-based recommendation algorithm that would offer users an unprecedented experience. I watched his smug, disgusting face on the news and smiled. He had stolen my concept, but he had only copied the surface. In his rush to market, he had failed to address several fatal bugs in the algorithm's core logic. He had built a beautiful castle of sand. All I had to do was wait for the tide to come in and watch it all collapse. On the day of its launch, Starlight, backed by a massive marketing blitz, did indeed attract a huge number of users. For a moment, Leo and Starforge Tech were the talk of the town. They even started trying to poach employees from Singularity. Stax was furious, but I told him to be patient. "Let him fly," I said. "The higher he gets, the harder he'll fall." 1 week later, just as Starlight's user base peaked and Leo was preparing to host a victory party to announce his next round of funding, I pushed the button. That afternoon, Millions of Starlight users suddenly found their feeds filled with bizarre, chaotic content. People who liked cooking videos were being served clips from horror movies. Fans of cute animal videos were getting endless streams of heavy construction equipment. Worse, the app began to experience catastrophic bugs. Constant crashing, freezing, and in some cases, even bricking users' phones. Within hours, the internet was in an uproar. The hashtag #StarlightIsTrash shot to the #1 trending topic on Twitter. Starforge Tech's servers crashed under the load of user complaints. Their stock price went into a freefall. Leo and his father were in a full-blown panic, but their engineers were helpless. They couldn't find the source of the problem, because the source of the problem was the very algorithm they were so proud of, the one in which I had planted Time Bomb. While Starforge Tech was imploding, I held the first ever product launch event for Singularity Systems. On stage, I officially unveiled our product, Nexus. It was also a short-form video app, but in front of all the assembled media, I explained in detail the architecture of our dynamic hive algorithm model. I gave a live demonstration of how it precisely catered to individual user tastes, while simultaneously preventing the formation of echo chambers. Then, I delivered the killing blow. I presented the media with irrefutable proof of how Leo Fisher had stolen my original concept, conspired with employees at Vance Corp to frame me, and had my initial project shut down. The evidence included emails, audio recordings, and a key witness. That witness was the very project manager Leo had bribed years ago. After the Starlight disaster, I offered him a deal he couldn't refuse. The evidence was damning. The room erupted. Starlight's revolutionary algorithm was nothing but a stolen, defective copy. Starforge Tech was a fraud. The press conference was live-streamed across the internet. Leo Fisher and Starforge were finished. He wasn't just facing bankruptcy. He was facing prison time for corporate fraud. After the event, I received an unexpected phone call. It was Harrison Vance. "Jake, you knew all along, didn't you?" His voice was tired, heavy with guilt. "Yes. The Vance family. We let you down." "You never let me down, sir." I cut him off. "I didn't do this to get revenge on your family. I just wanted to take back what was mine." After hanging up, I stood by the floor-to-ceiling window in my new office, watching the traffic flow below. My revenge was complete, but I didn't feel the euphoria I had expected. Instead, I just felt empty. Quinn walked in. "Mr. Miller." "Ms. Vance is downstairs." I frowned. "She says if you don't see her, she'll wait all night." I was silent for a moment, then finally nodded. "Let her come up." It was time to end this once and for all. I saw Catherine again in my new office. In just a few days, she seemed to have become a different person. She had lost weight. Her face was pale, with dark circles under her eyes. Her expensive, perfectly tailored suit now seemed to hang off her, looking worn and tired. The Ice Queen was gone. "I watched the press conference," she said, her voice raw. "I figured," I replied, pouring her a glass of water. She didn't take it. She just looked at me. "So, you had this all planned from the very beginning?" "Yes, I didn't deny it." "Including saving my father? Was that part of your plan too?" "No," I shook my head. "That was unexpected. But even if it hadn't happened, the outcome would be the same." My honesty was like a knife twisting in her heart. She gave a bitter smile, her eyes turning red. "Jake, I was horrible to you, wasn't I? I took your kindness for granted. I treated your love for me like it was something I could just step on whenever I wanted. I did like you, but I didn't know how to show it. I thought being hard on you, pushing you, was what was best for you. I didn't know. I didn't know I was hurting you so badly." She finally said it. "I didn't like you." The words I had waited a lifetime to hear. But now, hearing them, my heart was as still as a frozen lake. An apology that comes too late is worth less than nothing. "It's all in the past," I said quietly. "It's not," she cried, suddenly standing up and walking toward me. "Jake, we're not divorced yet. We signed the papers, but the 30-day cooling-off period, it's not over." She grabbed my hand, just as she had that night at the mansion. Only this time, her hand was burning hot, and it was trembling. "Jake, I was wrong. I truly know I was wrong. Let's not get divorced, okay? Let's start over. I'll give you half of Vance Corp. No, I'll give you all of it. I don't want anything. I just want you back." She was crying now. Tears streamed down her proud face like broken pearls. I watched her, but her tears stirred nothing in me. Calmly, deliberately, I pried her fingers off my hand, one by one. Catherine, it was the first time I had ever used her full name. Do you think that everything in the world is yours for the taking? First me, and now this marriage. Do you think when I'm sorry can erase all the pain? Can it erase my father dying of a broken heart? Can it erase the life I lost? My last words were barely a whisper, but to Catherine, they were a thunderclap. Lost? Life? What? What are you talking about? She stared at me, her eyes wide with disbelief. I smiled. It was time for her to know the whole truth. Why do you think I know first aid? Why do you think I knew about Bitcoin? Why did I know Marcus Thorne's secret? I leaned in close, my voice so low only she could hear. Because I've already died once. I died 3 years after you threw me out. Your best friend, Leo Fisher, had me run off the road. And I came back with all my memories to the night we signed the divorce papers. So, Catherine, do you understand now? This isn't me being angry with you. This is me genuinely not wanting a person like you in my life ever again. Catherine's body began to shake violently. The color drained from her face, leaving it a deathly white. She staggered back, bumping into the sofa and collapsing onto it. She looked at me, her eyes filled with terror, regret, and a profound, bottomless despair. So that was it. She had lost more than just a man who loved her. She had lost a life, and a past she could never get back. I told Catherine everything. I told her how in the last life, after I died, she finally woke up, how she ruthlessly destroyed Leo Fisher, and how, in the end, she took her own life at my grave. These were things I'd seen in the fragmented memories of my past life. When I finished, I didn't look at her again. I called Quinn and asked her to show our guest out. I don't know how Catherine left my office. From that day on, she disappeared. Vance Corporation announced that CEO Catherine Vance was taking an indefinite leave of absence for health reasons. Her father, Harrison, resumed control of the company. My life, it seemed, had finally found its peace. The Nexus app launched and, with its unparalleled user experience, quickly dominated the market. The valuation of Singularity Systems soared, soon breaking the $10 billion mark. I became the youngest and most celebrated tech mogul in Northgate. I bought a new house and new car. I had Stax and his girlfriend move in with me. I wished I could bring my father over, but the memory of his death in the last life was a fresh, sharp pain. I had everything. Wealth, status, fame, but I always felt like something was missing. Especially late at night, when the world was quiet, my thoughts would drift to Catherine. I would remember her in the last life, at my grave, whispering, "Jake, I'm coming to be with you," as her own blood stained the ground. And I would remember her in this life, her face devoid of all life after hearing the truth. I told myself I deserved this. This was what she owed me. But why didn't I feel the satisfaction of revenge? A month later, a heavy rain was falling over Northgate. I was driving home from the office. As I passed the large bridge that spanned the river in the center of the city, I pulled over, guided by some strange impulse. The rain hammered against the windshield, blurring the world outside. Through the downpour, I saw a lone, slender figure standing by the bridge's railing. She had no umbrella. The cold rain soaked her completely. It was Catherine. My heart seized in my chest. What was she doing? I threw open my car door and ran. Catherine! I grabbed her wrist. It was as cold as a block of ice. She turned her head slowly. When she saw me, a flicker of light returned to her empty eyes. "Jake!" She smiled, a broken expression that was more painful than tears. "You do still care about me, don't you?" "Get in the car," I said, trying to pull her away from the edge. But she clung to the railing, refusing to move. "Tell me, Jake," she said, looking at me. Rain streamed down her face, indistinguishable from tears. "In the last life, did I really die with you?" I was silent. "Did I?" she pressed. "Yes." I finally forced the word out. She smiled. It was a smile of relief and of infinite sorrow. "Good. That's good," she murmured to herself, then suddenly yanked her hand free and tried to climb over the railing. "No!" My world narrowed. Without thinking, I lunged forward and wrapped my arms around her, tackling her to the wet, cold pavement. "Catherine, are you crazy?" I screamed into her ear. "I'm not." She struggled in my arms, her voice a raw cry. "Let me die, Jake. I owe you a life. Let me pay you back. If I pay you back, Can we start over? You think dying fixes everything. I held her tighter, pinning her struggles. Catherine, listen to me. I didn't come back to life just to watch you die again. She froze, her struggles ceasing. I looked down at her, my mind a chaotic storm. Did I hate her? Of course I did. But in that moment, when I saw her about to jump, all the hate in the world couldn't outweigh the deep, primal fear that gripped me. I was terrified of losing her for good. In the last life, and in this one, this woman, the woman I had loved and hated, was like a thorn embedded so deeply in my soul that it could never be removed. I took Catherine back to my house. She was soaked to the bone and burning with a fever, muttering deliriously. I changed her into dry clothes, fed her fever reducers, and spent hours wiping her down with a cool cloth. I had done these things countless times in our past life. Back then, it was with a heart full of love and desperate hope. Now, my feelings were a tangled mess I couldn't begin to unravel. Stax and his girlfriend watched in stunned silence as I brought a woman home and personally cared for her. Jake, isn't that your ex-wife? Yeah. Are you guys? Don't ask. I cut him off. I sat by her bed all night. She woke up the next morning. The fever was gone, but she was still incredibly weak. She opened her eyes, and when she saw me slumped in the chair beside her, her expression wavered, and then the tears started again. Jake, I'm sorry. It seemed to be the only thing she knew how to say anymore. I sighed and handed her a glass of water. Take your medicine. She did as she was told, without protest. For the next few days, she stayed at my house. I didn't tell her to leave, and she didn't ask. She became quiet, docile. She was no longer the imperious queen, but a lost child who had made a terrible mistake and didn't know how to fix it. She would try to clean the house, though she'd clearly never done it before and usually made a bigger mess. She tried to cook for me and nearly set the kitchen on fire. Watching her fumble through these simple tasks, I sometimes found it amusing and sometimes heartbreaking. Stax couldn't take it anymore. He pulled me aside one day. Jake, what's the plan here? Do you still love her? Did I? I asked myself the same question. It didn't feel like love anymore. It was something heavier, more complicated. It was 2 lifetimes of entanglement, a habit carved into my bones, a bond that refused to be severed. I don't know, I told him honestly. So you're just going to let her stay here forever? I didn't have an answer. That night, I was in my study working. Catherine knocked and came in, carrying a mug of hot milk. She placed it on my desk, but didn't leave. She just stood behind me, watching me. Jake, she said softly, tomorrow is the last day of the cooling-off period. My hands paused over the keyboard. That's right. 30 days were almost up. If neither of us went to the courthouse tomorrow, the divorce would be finalized automatically. If you don't want to see me again, her voice trembled slightly. I'll go tomorrow. She was giving the choice back to me. I swiveled my chair around to face her. In the soft lamplight, her face was still pale, but her eyes held a look I had never seen before. A careful, fragile hope. Like a prisoner awaiting their sentence. 1,000 images flashed through my mind. Me on my knees, begging her not to leave. Her, coldly tossing the papers in my face. My own violent death. Her suicide in my grave. And her, in the rain, pleading for my forgiveness. All the love, all the hate, all the regret and resentment from 2 lifetimes converged in that single moment, the weight of it all so heavy I could barely breathe. I looked at her, and for a long time I said nothing. Outside, the moonlight was as clear as water. My life, once again, had come to a crossroads. To the left was complete freedom, a future where we were strangers, 2 ships passing in the night. To the right was to fall back into the abyss, to continue this tangled dance with a woman who had haunted me for 2 lifetimes. What was the right choice? I didn't know.